Are you ready for the truth?
Bring it on.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Do you want the whole truth?
I don't think you're ready.
Governments don't control things. A government can't control the economy without controlling people.
It's Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth.
Welcome back. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, proudly on. Say it with me now, AFR Talk. And we've seen a lot out of the debt ceiling. Well, what will be the debt ceiling debate inevitably, and the CR. We're going to be joined by Hans von Spakovsky in a little later on this half hour. But I did want to hearken back. Now, this may seem, well, Crane, what about the New York SUV biker thing? I got it. I got. There's a lot going on. But as I was crafting the show tonight, I thought we really need to understand what's at stake. We all do, and the tactics that have been used. And I believe I've figured out the Republican strategy overall. You see, they're exposing the scare tactics of President Obama. They're exposing the fact that he is using, they say, and I would make the argument that he is using the people that he purports to help. He's using them as pawns, hurting them in order to achieve a political goal. And he has done it in the past. Now, this doesn't speak well of leadership when you have to scare people into doing what you want so they're reacting. That's not a good way to go. In fact, while there's a healthy fear and respect, that doesn't come when it comes to the government, and specifically our president, playing games with Social Security or our debt, in the sense of announcing to others that the possibility of default, especially when he knows it's not true. But he knows it's a wonderful way to deal with it. Now, I'll give you an example of that. I need you to go to cut 22. Call in an audible, thank you. Cut 22 before B21. Why would the president make a statement like this? Think about what happened in 2008. Think about the destruction. Think about the fear. Think about panic. Why would the president make this statement? Roll it.
No, I think this time's different. I think they should be concerned. And I had a chance to speak to some in the financial industry who came down for their typical trip. And I told them that it is not unusual for Democrats and Republicans to disagree. That's the way the founders designed our government. Democracy's messy. But when you have a situation in which a faction is willing, potentially, to default on U.S. government obligations, then we are in trouble.
Why would you do that when you know we can service the debt, that we have enough money for the entitlements that would go? Why would you do that? Well, it's strategy, Crane. Wait a second. You're going to mess with the markets, use your power as the chief executive to mess with the markets, to communicate that? You're talking about people's pensions, their retirements. 100 million people invest in the stock market. Arguably because there's really no other place to go, because we don't know. Once I would say, once inflation starts, you'll see people run back to gold. I mean, see it more pronounced, but I digress. The point is, why would you do that? You got to ask yourself that question. Why would you make that kind of statement? Hey, this is a typical thing. This has happened before. The debt ceiling debate, the continuing resolution. We've seen this before in our history 17 times. And in the last 25 years, we've seen this. It's existed under Reagan. Come on now. Or 30 years. 40, 50 years. But we've seen it before. So why would you do that? That's a question. Why would you do this? Here's the president and embracing the use of scare tactics. This is on sequester. Excuse me. This is how he sold Obamacare. You remember this? Roll it. B21, sorry.
A lot of people worry that what you're going to wind up with is hash. There's even some Democrats saying, no, we've got a bill that's so compromised that it's not worth signing.
If we don't pass it, here's the guarantee. Your premiums will go up. Your employers are going to load up more costs on you. Potentially, they're going to drop your coverage because they just can't afford an increase of 25, 30% in terms of the cost of providing health care to employees each and every year. And the federal government will go bankrupt because Medicare and Medicaid are on a trajectory that are unsustainable. And this actually provides us the best chance of starting to bend the cost curve on the government expenditures of Medicare and Medicaid. So anybody who says that they are concerned about the deficit, concerned about debt, concerned about loading up taxes on future generations, you have to be supportive of this health care bill, because if we don't do this, nobody argues with the fact that health care costs are going to consume the entire federal budget.
Well, yes, but that's Medicare entitlement, and you demonize the people to do that. Never let the facts get in the way. Thank you, Charlie Gibson, for that. Remember, that's how it was sold to us. We don't do anything. All this is going to happen. All this is happening, and it's greater than it once was. So he's doing that. Premiums are going up, and you've locked into a situation where the government has taken over insurance companies. 80% must go here. If it doesn't, we're going to work in here of where you're going to spend your money, how you're going to spend it. In essence, this is the insurance companies go out of business bill so we can get single payer. But again, I digress. That's an overall meta point to this. You've got to understand this man is going, the world is coming down unless we do more government of what we got here. And it's amazing that he points to the government going bankrupt because of the unfunded entitlements and yet creates another one with dodgy math. I'm not angry. I'm just passionate. Buffet, take it, leave it, from a disciple in progress, doing the best I can with my shaped head. I must continue because it really chaps me when he does this kind of thing, which no other president has done till President Obama, and he's done it twice. It's about cut 9 and sequester, Social Security checks, and debt ceiling. Pardon me, the debt ceiling. Roll it.
Can you tell the folks at home that no matter what happens, the Social Security checks are going to go out on August the 3rd? There are about $20 billion worth of Social Security checks that have to go out the day after the government is supposedly going to go into default.
Well, this is not just a matter of Social Security checks. These are veterans checks. These are folks on disability and their checks. There are about 70 million checks that go out.
Can you guarantee as president those checks will go out on August the 3rd?
I cannot guarantee that those checks go out on August 3rd if we haven't resolved this issue, because there may simply not be the money in the coffers.
It's not true. It's just not true. And he's willing to do that. Now, at some point, people have to be held to account for their actions, their policies, their words. I took the most recent example of him trying to mess with the markets, making a statement that was tremendously irresponsible. Oh, he's just being honest. Really? He's being honest? If he was being honest, he'd tell us we could service the debt. If he'd be honest to say enough money for Social Security back in 2011, in August 2011, he would have said that. If he was honest, he wouldn't have tried to use dodgy math of double counting when it came to selling us the health care bill. Hey, I know I've plugged into this topic tonight big time. Normally we do a lot more variety, but this is on the line. Your freedom, our freedom is on the line. We're already seeing it once it's locked in, and that's what they're counting on. Why don't they suspend the mandate for a year, the individual mandate? Because the funding mechanism is, they realize once they suspend that, enough time will pass where people will see Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, for what it is, unaffordable and a loss and a weakening and possibly absolutely losing their health care that they have had. They see it as a turn to the government and going to the DMV for your health care. And they see it and they don't like that, so they don't arbitrarily suspend. How many mandates? 50 they've missed. They've missed 50 deadlines, pardon me. They suspend the employee mandate. Where's the law to do that? But they don't do it for the individual mandate. They see the impact the medical device tax has had. They see bipartisan support. Why don't they do it? They don't. At some point, they sincerely believe in more government. They believe that. They believe the way to get you to more government is to scare you. I believe the conservative position is just to tell you the truth about what is actually happening. We don't have to lie about it. And that's nothing but truth. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. We continue, and our good friend Hans von Spakovsky will be with us in a moment here as we get him going. And he is a senior legal analyst at the Heritage Foundation, and he's been obviously writing about the CR and the truth about that. He's also been writing about a whole host of other issues concerning the Department of Justice, getting involved in education and restricting the rights of students in Louisiana desiring to escape schools that are not serving them. Also, out of Louisiana, back in 2005, a case where he describes the Department of Justice's conduct. Actually, I think he quotes a judge as being grotesque. Grotesque DOJ misconduct, as he talks about in the case for 5 New Orleans police officers convicted for a shooting on the Danziger Bridge, September 4th, 2005. So as we look at that, we'll talk to him about that. We'll also talk about a case that involves a soldier that has been killed. And the question, was it a hate crime? The soldier was white. The alleged murderer, the killer, was black. So that on the agenda as well. And as we continue to look, Hans could weigh in on the Fast and Furious issue. Yes, the Fast and Furious issue. The author, the ACLU, is defending for the ATF attempting to suppress a book written about Fast and Furious. So we have a lot to talk about with Hans, and we begin first and foremost. Let's talk about the continuing resolution, the debt limit, some of the things that we are hearing. Hans, I just got through detailing how the president and those on the left have been using the scare tactics, and historically they've used them in every crisis, threatening Social Security, threatening the credibility or the credit of the United States. And when I think about the history of this issue, have we seen other presidents behave in this manner, Hans?
No, and in particular, we haven't seen before the president trying to use the cutoff in funding to try to deliberately hurt the American people. And the best example of that is the way they've been not just closing national parks, but actually telling private companies who have leased national parks, and therefore there's no federal money involved, even telling them they have to shut down.
Is that legal?
I think the people who have leases, if I was them, I would be in court with a lawyer seeking an injunction against the department. I mean, look, one of the best examples of this is Mount Vernon, home of George Washington, which has been run for many, many years by a private organization, and yet the Park Service has tried to shut them down.
Hans, long as we're on the topic here of what is being done in the back and forth by the president's response to the House funding bills that would actually alleviate the pain of the people that are being hurt, that the president talks about being hurt. But as long as we're on that, why don't we go to one of the main proposals that is out there, which is to suspend the individual mandate for 1 year, like he did with the employer mandate. First question, was that legal for him to suspend that mandate? And second question, if so, or if not, is he able to do it with the individual mandate? If so, same question.
No, what he did with the employer mandate was not legal because, in fact, there's nothing in the law that gives him the authority to waive that requirement. But, it's difficult for Congress to do anything about it.
And that's part of what they're doing. They're using their power, aren't they, Hans, in the sense of the power of the purse?
Yes, that is exactly what's going on. And it just amazes me to hear people talking about this as if it's unprecedented, as if it's some tremendous crisis. The House of Representatives has been doing that throughout our entire history. I mean, there have been many, many times where they've gotten into disputes, and funding for the government has lapsed for some amount of time.
Let's talk about the rule of law. Let's talk about Fast and Furious. A judge has rejected the arguments of the DOJ regarding the information documents, withholding information, Hans, when it relates to Fast and Furious?
Yeah, what happened was, as most people know, is the Attorney General was held in contempt for not turning over literally tens of thousands of documents about Operation Fast and Furious. The House of Representatives went to court, and the President claimed executive privilege. He said that all those documents were protected and they didn't have to release them. That is the issue in this lawsuit, and last week a court refused the Justice Department's request to dismiss the lawsuit. Justice had gone in and made, frankly, the exact same arguments that Richard Nixon made when he claimed that the court has no business deciding whether or not the president's claim of executive privilege is a legitimate one. And the court, actually an Obama appointee, threw out the Justice Department's request and was pretty critical of GOJ for raising issues that were settled basically 40 years ago in the case U.S. versus Nixon.
Man, I bet the press, I mean, because of Nixon and invoking Nixon and those tactics, I assume we're going to be seeing some calls from the mainstream media for Holder to be out, yeah?
Yeah, you know, what's amazing about this is there was almost no coverage of this in the mainstream press. Imagine if, for just a second, if a Republican president were in court asserting the same kind of arguments that Richard Nixon had. People would be beside themselves over that, and yet, like I said, almost no mention in the press about this.
Fast and Furious, also another story, the ATF attempting to suppress a book that's coming out written by somebody within that department, and the ACLU is stepping in on behalf of the whistleblower of the Fast and Furious to defend against the ATF. Who's going to win this one? Is the author going to have a right to release this information, Hans?
Well, I'm actually glad to see the ACLU setting up. It's John Dobson who was one of the whistleblowing agents. And you know what's amazing about the ATF's refusal is normally a law enforcement agency can stop a book written by one of their employees if the book would release, classified information or if it would compromise an ongoing law enforcement proceeding. The ATF told this guy, Mr. Dodson, they didn't say anything like that. You know what they said? They said this would hurt morale within the ATF. That was the reason they gave for not allowing him to publish the book. I think if this ends up in court, the ATF will lose this case so fast it'll make your head spin, because that is, you can't violate somebody's First Amendment rights because it might hurt morale. Okay, and again, what I see is the law kind of catching up as the way it does with the enforcement of things that have happened maybe out of the public eye for now, but certainly we're familiar with in scandal, and say, what happened to that Fast and Furious? Certainly we have information that you've just talked about. And then we have grotesque DOJ misconduct. This harkens back to Katrina and the trial for 5 New Orleans police officers convicted for a shooting on the Danziger Bridge. And grotesque is not your word, Hans. It's the judge's, right? Yeah, those were the words of a federal judge out of Louisiana. Grotesque prosecutorial abuse engaged in by lawyers within the Civil Rights Division and the U.S. Attorney's Office. And because of that abuse, he overturned the convictions of those 5 New Orleans police officers and ordered new trials for them. The order makes just unbelievable, really shocking reading at how these prosecutors broke ethics rules, acted unprofessionally throughout the case. And arguably, if we looked at Eric Holder's record, we would see this coming from an Eric Holder Justice Department. I have to say that because this is something, the reason why we look at one's record before
hey, it's a nod and you go, approval. You got to bring these things out because it deals with the rule of law. And with the rule of law, we had the rule of law and regulation with the EEOC and the Navy Yard shooter. Tell me, Hans, I didn't know about this until I typed in your name. I missed your article on this regarding the Navy Yard shooter. Explain.
Well, last year, the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, they issued these rules basically telling employers that they believe it's discriminatory treatment for employers to do criminal background checks on their employees. It's actually just a crazy rule. It's against common sense. But, I wrote a piece about the fact that, remember the guy accused in the Navy Yard shootings, he had been previously arrested for gun-related violence. Well, under the EEOC rules, even if his employer at the Navy Yard had known about this, if they had refused to hire him, it's highly likely the EEOC would have come in and sued them for not hiring the guy, saying that their treatment of him was discriminatory.
And we're looking to put more regulations forth. Yes. Okay, so we have regulations and these types of regulations and the results. I think that would be a big light shined on that and very disturbing to say the least. Hans, Louisiana, again, I wanted to get an update if there is any on the school choice issue and the DOJ attempting to stop kids from getting into schools or taking their opportunity to escape failing schools.
Well, there hasn't been a change in the legal case. They did file, Judge's Justice filed an action to try to stop what was going on down there, although they're now claiming publicly, because I think they've seen that this is a public relations disaster for them, that they're supposedly not trying to stop kids from using school vouchers, but that they just want more information about what's going on. The public rhetoric does not match the legal pleadings filed in the lawsuit.
And final question for you, Hans. If we see an executive punishing the people that he purports to help through crisis, how does that get translated into Ted Cruz, you're losing the debate? Republicans, you're losing the debate.
Well, I think those are that's the kind of story put forth by critics. I think Ted Cruz and other Republicans are doing exactly what they should, which is raging a fight on an overspending federal government.
And they're exposing it. They're exposing the tactics as well. Hey, Hans, great to be with you. Thank you so much, buddy.
Thank you,
Take care. All right, Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. We're out of time tonight, but you can go to the Facebook page, like the page, engage. I'll put some stuff up from the show, and I'll be with you tomorrow night. Remember, if you remember one thing from the show tonight, remember this: God knows you. God loves you. He created you. He loves you right where you're at. You're worth it. Live with honor in your life, compassion in your heart, and always keep the faith in Jesus Christ. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, AFR Talk.